Social knowledge. The sophisticated understanding of others' behavior that may be present in animals would be advantageous to an individual's ability to predict the behavior of others in order to interact effectively with other members of the group. There is another aspect of social cognition, however, that is likely a key element to the maintenance of smooth social interactions, as it too provides information from which one can predict behavior. This aspect is often referred to as social knowledge, the recognition of individuals and their relationships to one another. Many animal species are thought to live in socially complex societies, though what this complexity refers to may differ. In the case of social insects, for example, thousands of individuals may live within the same colony, interacting with each other differently based on sex, caste, or reproductive state. Many monkey species live in considerably smaller groups that can range from 10 to 30 individuals, yet their interactions appear to be sensitive to dominance, kinship, sex, and even previous interactions, suggesting a complex system of social interactions. Baboons and vervet monkeys, for example, will engage in redirected aggression. After being threatened by one individual, a monkey may redirect his own threatening behaviors to an individual related to the one who originally threatened him, suggesting some sort of knowledge of the relationships between other individuals in the social group. Yet, social complexity does not necessarily imply the underlying workings of complex cognitive mechanisms. Using the example of baboons, does a baboon that apparently knows the matrilineal kin relations of others in her group have a social concept, as some have argued, or has the baboon simply learned to link individual A1 with individual A2 through a relatively simple process like associative learning, as others believe? At present, the preferred explanation depends more upon the scientist's mind than upon any objective understanding of the baboons. This section will consider proposals regarding the organization and structure of social knowledge, primarily in vervet monkeys, as this species has been followed closely by psychologist Robert Seyfarth and biologist Dorothy Cheney in the wild. In particular, there has been focus on kin relations and dominance rank, both of which will be described below. Kin relations. In vervet society, figure 10.14, males emigrate to other groups when they reach maturity, while females remain in their natal group. Subsequently, the hierarchy follows the stable matrilineal families with offspring ranking right below their mothers. There is ample evidence that individuals recognize members of their own families, given their propensity to groom and form alliances more often with kin. However, to navigate effectively through the social group, one should also know about the relationships among members outside of one's own family, that is, third-party relationships. It would seem important, for example, to avoid threatening an individual who is part of a more dominant matriline. One piece of evidence for this type of social knowledge comes from the example of redirected aggression presented above, but redirected aggression can be even more complicated. Cheney and Seyfarth, 1986, found that a female, A1, is more likely to aggress toward another monkey, B1, if a relative, A2, was recently involved in an aggressive encounter with her opponent's relative, B2. This suggests that A1 recognizes a similarity between her relationship with A2 and the relationship between B1 and B2. Dominance rank. As mentioned, the vervet hierarchy follows matrilineal lines, and to human observers, it follows a linear transitive order. If 1 is dominant to 2 and 2 is dominant to 3, then 1 is dominant to 3. Monkeys could potentially recognize the ranking differences among the other members in their group, or simply keep track of those who are dominant or subordinate to them. Observations from wild vervet monkeys suggest that this species does, in fact, recognize other individuals' relative ranks. Cheney and Seyfarth took advantage of the fact that females often compete for grooming partners to guide their observations. If 2 females are grooming and a third one arrives, the arriving monkey will supplant one of them and resume grooming. Interestingly, if the female who approaches is dominant to the other 2, it is the less dominant of the 2 groomers who leaves. For this to occur with any regularity, it would appear that the more dominant of the groomers would have to recognize her rank relationship with both the approaching female and the present grooming partner, as well as the relationship between the approaching female and the grooming partner. That is, for her to remain seated, she would have to recognize her middle position between the approaching female and the grooming partner, and that the partner is ranked lower than both herself and the approaching female. Underlying cognitive mechanisms. There are at least two, if not more, potential cognitive mechanisms that might underlie the ability to recognize third-party relationships and hierarchies. One suggestion is that animals form equivalence classes, that is, sets of stimuli that have been grouped together via experience. Importantly, and different from stimulus generalization, the grouping is not based on physical similarity but prior association. Thus, it is possible that vervets form an equivalence class consisting of members of a matriline based on their prior association. A vervet may then threaten the relative of an opponent because of the class membership. Additionally, this allows for an understanding of the transitivity in the hierarchy. Because if A1 and A2 are equivalent and B1 and B2 are equivalent, then A1 is greater than B1 would imply that A2 is greater than B2. Figure 10.15, recognizing other individuals' relative ranks. As detailed in Cheney and Seyfarth 1990, if a second-ranked individual approaches a grooming pair consisting of a fourth-ranked individual and a fifth-ranked individual, the fifth-ranked individual leaves. Oh wow, so almost 30 times a lower-ranking female leaves and like 1 time a higher-ranking female leaves. Wow. However, there are researchers who suggest that this type of associative process cannot adequately account for all forms of social knowledge. For one, within a matriline, aggression still may occur at relatively high rates, and grooming may occur in different amounts between different members. Additionally, friendships with non-kin exist and can fluctuate even on a daily basis. Thus, the formation of equivalence classes through associative relationships may be a difficult task. That said, there is very likely a role played by associative learning in social knowledge. However, there may be other processes as well. One strong candidate is a memory system that allows for chunking, as discussed in Chapter 3. Individual members can be linked through associations, and this knowledge can be organized into hierarchical groups, chunks. Monkeys who must remember numerous dyadic and even triadic relationships would be greatly aided by a system that decreased memory load and organized information in a hierarchical manner. Chapter Summary. Social living results in particular cognitive challenges that must be overcome in order to interact effectively. The detection of animacy is a basic foundational ability for the ability to interact in a social environment. Recognizing conspecifics, predators, and prey is critical for adaptive behavior. Mechanisms appear to be in place that allow animals to detect living entities, perhaps even from birth, in turn allowing rapid learning about important individuals in the environment, including conspecifics and their behavior. Perceptual narrowing is a process by which experiences with certain stimuli result in a system that is tuned to those features, allowing for increased recognition and distinctions within those stimuli as compared to other stimuli. Exposure to faces, for example, may affect face processing by tuning it to the types of faces that are most prevalent in the environment. Adult humans observe someone's behavior and can create a representation that includes such elements as the physical actions, the setting, and the internal mental states, e.g. feelings, desires, emotions, beliefs, and intentions. These mental states are the assumed causes of the behavior. It is very difficult to examine whether any non-human animal species or even human infants engage in mental state reasoning. Verbal answers to test questions are, of course, not available. Further, it is difficult to determine whether the subjects are actively attributing mental states or coming up with the correct answer by some other means. Most developmental researchers will state that by at least 6 months of age, human infants view certain actions as goal-directed, but what is meant by goal-directed can vary. Some researchers claim that infants are only reasoning about behavior, and some claim they are reasoning about mental states, such as the desires that cause behavior. Some of the experimental tasks completed with human infants have been slightly modified to be used with non-human primates. Many of these tasks, however, can be solved by reasoning about behavior without reference to mental states. Tasks that include unintentional, accidental actions may allow for conclusions based on mental state attribution. Using experimental paradigms that place chimpanzees in a competitive context and specifically examine their mental attributions toward conspecifics, some researchers have suggested that chimpanzees reason about certain mental states, like seeing and even knowing, yet perhaps not false beliefs. Alternatively, some propose that chimpanzees have a cognitive system that allows for past experience of others' behavior to be organized by biases or heuristics that would allow them to recognize causally relevant aspects of current behavior and reason about likely future behavior. Social knowledge refers to the recognition of individuals and their relationship to one another. Relationships that may be of particular social importance to a social species are kinship and dominance. The cognitive mechanisms that allow for representing third-party relationships are still being examined, but may involve aspects of associative learning and memory systems that allow for chunking.